friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first video of 2022. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Furry and Bright, Really High Five, Party Animal, Totally Awesome, Elfie Selfie, and Say What Pets. So I've stamped my images out on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. And I'm going to be coloring to match a piece of pattern paper, so I'm going to tuck that under my cardstock panel so I can pull my color palette from that. So I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers, and I'm starting with the little dogs. For them, I'm using E33, E35, and E37 to start. I'm going to use that E37 to lay in some shadows. I'm going to use this little guy first and just take those shadows down the back of his body and then add a little bit to his little forearms where his head is casting a shadow above that, and then also down the backs of his legs and below his ear. And then I'm going to begin to blend that out with the E35, making sure to really scrub over the edge of that E37 and soften up that darkest color and pull it into this mid-tone. So I'm just working my way around. I'm going to leave some little white spots on him as well because I wanted him to look kind of like a beagle. That's kind of the look I was going for. And so I want there to be some white areas on them as well. So I'm going to take that E33, that lightest shade, and kind of draw out the white space that I want to leave on his muzzle. I'm also going to leave a little bit on his neck and his front paws and his belly and his back paws as well, and the tip of his tail. So I'm just going to make sure that that is blended really nicely. And I thought that the hind leg just needed a bit more brown to kind of connect it to the front of the body, so I just went back and filled in a little bit more of that. And then I'm going to add in the E39, and I'm going to use the darkest three shades to color in the ears. Typically, if you look at pictures of beagles, they have a little bit of a darker brown ear. So I started with the E39 and blended forward with the E37, and then used the E35 for the lightest. And now I'm adding in E30 and using that to make the transition from the E33 into the white space that I want to leave there. For the second dog, I'm going to color her much the same because I wanted them to look like they could be litter mates. So I'm using the same markers, but the shading will be just a little bit different. I know it looks confusing because I have all 5 of those shades up again, but I am going back to that original combo. I started with the E37 as the darkest, and then I'm blending out with the E35 for the midtone, and just making sure again to work over the edge of that E39 so it doesn't leave a harsh line and give me kind of like a ring around the outer edge of the image. I want everything to blend really seamlessly. And then I'm using the E33 for the highlight on this main part of the body. So just bringing that down toward the belly area. And then I'm going to go back to the ears and use that darkest shade again, that E39 for the shadows, blending out with the E37, and then using the E35 for the highlights. And then I'll take that E30 and use that to bridge the gap once again with that just transition area there into that white space. I did leave a little bit more white space on this pup because even litter mates, they don't look identical. Each little dog has their own little markings and personalities, so I wanted them to be just slightly different. Then I'm going to switch things up and go for some darker browns. Beagles usually have a darker brown patch on their backs. So for that, I'm using E44, E47, and E49. I started with that E49, but I only used a tiny bit of that because that color is really, really dark. And then I blended that out with the E47 and then brought in the E44. It still wasn't making a nice transition for me. So I did go to the E43, which is a little bit lighter, and use that to kind of blend it out a bit into the rest of the fur tones. To give them some rosy cheeks, I went with R11 and R20. I used the R20 first, just did a little oval there, and then went around that with the R11. Then I'm moving over to that fallen log, and I'm going to use E55, E57, and E59. Taking that E59 and doing some shading down at the bottom and also in all of those little grooves that are drawn on there. Just trying to create some wood grain texture, and then I'll move on to the E57 and just pull a little bit of that in, but make sure to leave plenty of space for that E55, that lightest shade, so that it really creates that look of the grooved wood. And I wanted to use some different browns than I used on the dogs because the images will be overlapping on the card, and I wanted them each to be distinct. For the dog bone, I'm using E50 and E51, adding a little bit of like texture to there, just kind of emphasizing the roundness at the ends of the bones, and then blending out with the lighter shade. And then for the cake, I also used the E51 over on the right hand side and blended toward the left with the E50. And I did do a second layer on there just to make it a little bit more saturated. And then I'm going back to my R11 and R20 and added in the R22 for the frosting, so I can pull in some of the pink from that pattern paper. And by the way, that pattern paper was from one of the Perfectly Plaid sets. It actually came in my last Lawn Fawn order. If you order from Lawn Fawn directly, they usually include 3 sheets of 6x6 pattern paper in your order as like a little thank you bonus. And so it was sitting out on my desk, and I knew I wanted to do a birthday card because I haven't done any in quite a while since I was doing holiday cards. And I just looked over and saw the color palette and thought that was perfect for a birthday card. So I decided to use it. So not only am I doing the frosting from that cake, but I'm also going to do some more of my accessory images. I'll do some of the dots and stripes on the 2 party hats and also the wrapping paper on one of the gifts. And I just use the R22 first and then blend it out with the R20 and then use the R11 for the highlight. And then I wanted to pull out those blues that are in the finer stripe on that pattern paper. So I chose B01, B02, and B04. And I'm going to do more of the little party hats, also the ribbon on that pink gift, and the candles on the birthday cake. I pulled in B00 to do the background on the polka dot party hat. I just wanted something that the darker shades would contrast against. And then I went back to one of the little streamers on the top with the B04. Then I'm moving on to YR01, YR02, and YR04. I used just the YR04 for the flames on the candles, and then some of the polka dots on the little party hat, but I'm using the darkest 2 shades for the stripes. I'm going to use all 3 shades on the little ribbon on the gift. And then I also wanted the balloon to be this softer orange that is in that pattern paper right next to the pink stripe. So I'm going to start with the YR04 and add some shading down at the bottom and a little bit up the left hand side. And then I'm taking the YR02 and bringing that up even further, trying to create like a little bit of a round shape at the top right for the highlight. So I filled that all in with the YR01. but I wasn't really happy with the blend, so I did go over that with a second coat. And then I'm moving on to the greens in that pattern paper, and it's a really kind of lime green shade. So I went with YG21, YG23, and YG25, and I did the bow on the little bone and the rest of the stripes and polka dots on the little hats, and also the wrapping paper on that final gift. Just put the darkest at the bottom and the highlight at the top for that. And then I decided to go back to the E50 and E51 that I had used on the bone and add a little bit of shading to the outer edges of that speech bubble. Just left the center white, and then I trimmed these images out with their matching dies. I wanted my card today to be a mini slimline, so I took the large mini slimline dies and cut the largest one out of that pattern paper. And then I'm going to create a card base to go with that. So I'm using a piece of Lawn Fawn Mermaid cardstock, and I cut that cardstock down to 6 by 6, and then I'm scoring it in half at the 3-inch mark. So the whole card base will be 6 inches wide by 3 inches tall. I'll pop that in my MISTI so I can stamp a sentiment and another image on the inside. I'm using Peacock ink for that, and I'm stamping the third little dog and that bone again from Furry and Bright, and the sentiment Make a Wish is from Party Animal. And I'm using my Twiddler's Nook Pressure Pal and stamping that down a few times to make sure I have a nice impression. Then I took the second largest of the large mini slimline dies, along with the grassy border and the simple stitch hillside borders. I cut the simple stitch hillside border out of some Noble Fur cardstock and the grassy border out of cilantro. And so I'm gluing that down to my sky piece, which is MFT Snow Cone cardstock. And I'm just going to layer those up to create like a little hill with some grass behind it. I adhered the pattern paper to the card front with some liquid glue, and then I'm popping up the focal panel with some Scotch 3M foam tape. And you could also use like the largest of the small mini slimlines. I just wanted a little bit of a larger border on there, so that's why I only used the large ones on this card. And then I'm going to begin to adhere my images. So I'm adding that log into the scene, kind of over towards the left-hand side, just a little left of center. I also die cut 2 little clouds from the Spring Showers die set, and I wanted to use those to kind of fill in my sky a bit. So I'm going to put the smallest one over on the left-hand side and the medium over on the right-hand side. There's also a larger one, but I decided not to use that on today's card since the mini slimline scene was kind of small, so I didn't want the largest cloud to overwhelm that. So I just tucked that back a little bit behind the grasses to push that sky out a little bit further. I'm going to have the cake sitting on top of the fallen log, and then this little dog is going to be with its little paws perched up on the log so he can be ready to blow out those candles. And then the second little dog, I wanted him to be running and dragging that balloon behind him. So I'm going to adhere him down, and then I'm going to adhere that little balloon string down so that it is kind of going toward the right hand side, kind of blowing back a little bit to kind of indicate that movement. And then I will add that balloon to the end of the balloon string, kind of overlapping that cloud. And yeah, I just think it's a fun look, something that a dog would totally do, drag that balloon around. I'm going to add that speech bubble sentiment right above that second dog, and then I will decorate with all of my little accessories. I'm going to give each of these pups a party hat. I put the polka dot one on the birthday pup and the striped one on his guest. And then I'm going to add the little bone kind of in front of the log. So there's like a little pile of gifts there. I'm going to put the little pink gift right below that as well, kind of stacked on top of each other. And then I was going to put the third gift there as well, but I felt like there was some empty space over on the right hand side. So I decided to add that over there and kind of fill that in. And then to finish off the card, I felt like we needed some sparkle. So I grabbed my favorite Stardust Stickles and added a bit of glitter to each of the ribbons on the gifts, and also a little bit on the balloon. I just put it where the darkest shading was for that. And then I also filled in all of the flames on the candles on the birthday cake. I'll lift that up to the camera so you can see how that catches the light and get a closer look at all of that detail, and another peek at the inside as well. I really hope you guys enjoyed this first card of 2022. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I'll be posting them every Monday and Friday. Links to all the supplies I used will be down below in the description bar in case you need to pick up anything for yourself. And if you'd like to keep watching, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.